You have made it to Cycle 1. Cycle 1, we're going to be reading our pages 214 to 216. Before we start reading, make sure you have a notebook and pencil with you and your book. If you don't have a book, check I left the chapter that we are reading today with the link for this quiz. So please go back and grab that, pause the video, resume it when you have found those materials, go. Now that you have a notebook, something to write with, and your book, we can start reading pages 214 to 216. Page 214. Man! Ever since he heard me call my mama's name, Hermione Calloway had locked himself up in his room and wouldn't come out. Mr. Jimmy and Miss Thomas made me sit at the kitchen table whilst they knocked on his door and tried to talk to him into opening it up. But the way they kept saying Herman, soft at first, then louder and louder, it sounded like he wasn't talking back. After the longest, while they decided to let the big baby have his own way, they came back downstairs. They sat at the kitchen table with me. Miss Thomas looked at me and said, "My, my, my." Mr. Jimmy said, "Now look here, Bud." He wiped his hand over his face. "You're sure your mama's name is Angela Janet?" I said, "Yes, sir." And the two of them, uh, and the two of you both had the same last name? Her last name was Caldwell, too? She never said nothing about being no Calloway? I spelt it out for him. No, sir, her name was Caldwell. Caldwell. It seemed like he finally believed me. He said, Okay. I hope you don't mind me asking, Bud, but it's pretty important that we know. How'd your mama pass? And how long ago was it? Pass was just like gone. It was another one of those words grown folks use instead of dead. I said, 6 years old when it happened, sir. I don't know why. She was too sick to go to work for 6 days in a row. Then one morning I went into her room and she was dead. But she didn't suffer or nothing. It happened real quick. She didn't even have time to close her eyes. She didn't look like it hurt or nothing. Miss Thomas reached across the table and touched my arm. She said, I'm sure it didn't, Bud. I'm sure it was very peaceful for her. Mr. Jimmy said, When she was living, Bud, God rest her soul, what'd your mama look like? This was another strange question, but before I could answer, Miss Thomas said, James, what are you insinuating? I knew there was something familiar about this boy. I don't know how I missed it, but look at Bud's eyes. You have to ask if this is Herman's grandchild? Mr. Jimmy said, Now, hold on, Grace. I'm just trying to ask the questions I know Hermit asked if he could. Ain't a thing wrong with being certain before we jump to any conclusions. Now, what'd she look like, son? I said, She was real pretty, sir. Mr. Jimmy said, I bet she was, Bud. But that ain't what I meant. Was she short or tall? Was she slim or big-boned? I said, I don't know, sir. She was real pretty and real tall and kind of skinny like me, I guess. Miss Thomas said, James, Bud was 6 years old. Everyone on earth was real tall to him. I don't see the point in this. I don't see the point in all this. I said, Pardon me, ma'am. I know how I can show you what she looks like. I still got her picture. They just stared at me. I said, Can I be excused? Miss Thomas said, Yes, son. Hurry up and go get that picture. I busted up the stairs, but stopped like I hit a brick wall. I remember how mad and crazy Hermione Calloway looked when he yelled at me. I tippy-toed up to the rest of the steps. We're going to pause right there and go back to our Lesson 19 quiz. Our question for this cycle is, looking at this excerpt from 216, how would the meaning be different if the author made the changes in bold? And as you answer this question, I want you to think about the meanings of the bolded words and what words did they replace it with. It looks like it says, James, what are you insinuating? With James, what are you saying? We just learned what insinuated means. So tell me, how does the meaning of insinuated, how is that different than just saying? And then continue to do that with the rest of this question. How is it different? When you're done, move on to cycle 2.